To start the day off, I'll ask our Chief Safety Officer, Teresa Impastato, to please provide us with the safety contact. Ms. Impastato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to Metro headquarters. In the event of an alarm
Evacuation, we will exit via the glass door
and proceed into the lobby where we'll wait further instructions from the security team.
If we're instructed to exit the building, I'll exit the building. I'll designated assembly point at the adjacent Hancock
and the security team will coordinate with first responders.
There's an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of an emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while the security team
Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area.
Bicycles are welcome on Metro Rail during
Bicycles are welcome on Metro Rail
to be considerate of other customers and use good judgment by boarding cars that can comfortably accommodate you by boarding cars that can comfortably accommodate you.
Cyclists can transport their bikes free.
On Metro Bus, cyclists can transport their bikes free in racks attached to the front of each bus. Make sure that the bus operator sees you before you step in front of a bus to load a bicycle, and be sure to remind the operator that you'll be removing a bicycle before departing the bus. Buses have special mirrors that allow bus operators to see the bicycle racks as well as riders loading bicycles. Additional safety tips and more information can be found in the customer guide to Metro Bus and Metro Rail, which is available at WMATA.com. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you, Ms. Impastato, and again, welcome to the Metro Board's Executive Committee meeting. Since this is our first public meeting of the day, I'll ask our Board Corporate Secretary, Ms. Ellison, to please call the roll of the entire Board.
Thank you. Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Vice Chair Babers.
President.
Vice Chair Drummer.
Present.
Ms. Klein. Mr. Letourneau.
Present.
Dr. Lowe. Mr. Goldman.
Present.
Ms. Martin Proctor. Good morning. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Does anyone have any comments or objections from a committee member? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. We have minutes of our February 23rd meeting before us for approval. Are there any comments or objections to those sets of minutes? Hearing and seeing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on our agenda this morning, and that is to accept a report from the Inspector General to authorize the posting on the IG's website. Under the board's bylaws, the Executive Committee is responsible for reviewing and accepting the reports from the Inspector General. The committee has reviewed the following report: the Inspector General Semi-Annual Report to the Board, number 31. Before we take a vote, I'll ask our IG, Mr. Fiblis, would like to comment on the report and highlight anything for the committee. Good morning, Mr. IG.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Directors. I'm pleased today to present our 31st semi-annual report. It covers the period of July 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. During this reporting period, OIG has continued dedicating its efforts to our audits, investigations, and evaluations. Our OIG investigative work resulted in 1 criminal indictment, 3 reports of investigation, 2 management alerts, 2 management assistant reports, 1 correspondence to a congressional inquiry, and 1 matter as part of a board request. Additionally, we referred 4 companies to WMATA's procurement for debarment. Our audit work resulted in 1 program audit, 2 financial audits, 34 procurement and contract audits, 2 Buy America audits. Our contract audits led to the identification of $1.9 million in potential savings. And over the last 3 fiscal years, we have identified $41 million in potential savings. I want to first thank Randy and his staff for cooperation during our work. I want to thank my dedicated staff for all their work, and the board for your support. I want to thank. I'd gladly take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Fiblis. Any questions from committee members first? Any other board members? Okay. Hearing none, acceptance of this report constitutes the board's authorization to post it on the Inspector General's website, provided that the IG has conferred with the General Counsel and confirmed that any private or confidential information has been removed and or redacted in accordance with applicable law and WMATA policy. I would like to move approval of this item. Is there a second from a committee member?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Drummer. Now I'll ask Ms. Ellison to please administer the vote.
Chair Smedberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers.
Aye.
Vice Chair Drummer.
Aye.
Ms. Klein. Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. This report has been approved, and the Inspector General has been authorized to post it online. That completes our business for today. We will stand adjourned, and now we'll proceed to the Safety and Operations Committee meeting. Mr. Drummer.
Thank you, Mr. Smedberg. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Safety and Operations Committee. Our first order of business is to approve today's agenda. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to approval of the minutes from our February 9th meeting. Are there any objections? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have two significant information updates on the agenda this morning. In the first presentation, we'll receive a briefing on an important peer review of Metro's readiness to return to automatic train operations, ATO. This peer review was conducted by the American Public Transportation Association, APTA, and we're honored to have join us this morning three participants of that peer review: Mr. Addie Matthew, Mr. Ray Aguilera, and Jeff Mitchell. Addie Matthew is from the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, MARTA. Mr. Ray Aguilera is from the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, BART. And Jeff Mitchell is from the Transport for London. Following the discussion of their findings, we'll receive a staff update on Metro's progress to restore automatic train operations. Now, in the second presentation, the committee will receive an update on the NTSB investigation into the October 2021 derailment near Arlington Cemetery. And this includes findings on a likely root cause. Now, to start the series of presentations, I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Tiffany Jenkins, our Senior Vice President for Communications and Signaling.
Well, first, good morning, all. I'd like to thank the board, Chairman Drummer, Vice Chair Martin Proctor. Thank you all for having us back again. I am also joined by my colleague once again, Shanita Wilkerson, the Senior Vice President of Rail Transportation. Next slide, please. So in December last year, we came to the board to present the Return to Greater Automation 2 efforts. At that time, we mentioned that it was our intent to bring the American Public Transportation Association, or APTA, in to conduct a peer review to look at our program and tell us things that maybe we're not seeing. Also evaluating us against industry best practices, letting us know what potentially other agencies experienced, and just, are we missing anything in general? So today we look forward to having our APTA esteemed colleagues present their findings, recommendations, and to also provide you an update on how the program team is addressing these and continuing to move the effort forward. Next slide, please. Before we go to the APTA peer review, I just wanted to kind of pull this forward. Sorry. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to kind of ground everyone in how we got here. So it should go as noted that Metro operated for 33 years safely and reliably using Greater Automation 2. During the course of the 2009 incident, it was in an abundance of caution that Metro chose to suspend use of automatic train operations or Greater Automation 2. And during that time, we did the work to replace the infrastructure, to improve our maintenance and safety practices, our engineering alignment with industry best practices. And in 2014, going into 2015, we actually were able to run several months of a successful testing of use of automatic operations. But at that time, we felt that the resources were needed and the focus to make sure that our state of good repair of our infrastructure was prioritized. And so again, we kind of suspended the use of Greater Automation 2 or automatic operations. Since that time, we've done our due diligence again of improving our infrastructure, continuing to improve upon our maintenance and engineering practices. And in 2021, this program office was established, and we're very excited to present our Automation 2.0, which is a level up effort from our grade of Automation 1, which is manual mode operations, to grade of Automation 2, which is automatic train operations. Next slide. So I will hand it over to Shanita.
Good morning again. The last time we presented to the board, we discussed safety benefits of utilizing GOA2. Today, we want to provide some data around that speaks to reliability. In 2013, the Community and Metro's benchmarking group published a report of train reliability with a partial focus on performance impact when using automatic modes while operating instead of manual. The study evaluated 52 Metro lines across 16 transit systems to assess factors that impact train service reliability. When looking at the impact of the level of automation used in the delivery of service, specifically manual versus automatic, it found that automatic mode operations saw a 26% reduction in train service delays, lasting a duration of 5 minutes or greater. Additionally, when measuring the ability to meet the target reliability rate set for the analysis, 14 of the 28 lines with ATO met the reliability target, while only 2 of the 27 manually operated lines met the criteria. Next slide. With that, I would like to introduce the APTA panel. This team brings a vast amount of experience that range from 20 to 40 years in the industry. We're going to start off with Roy Aguilera, Chief Transportation Officer, Bay Area Rapid Transit. He has 38 years of transportation professional experience. He's responsible for operations, operations centers, and training. And we have Addie Matthews, Director of Maintenance Away, Metropolitan Area Rapid Transit Transportation Authority, has 20 years of signaling experience. He's responsible for maintenance, repair, and planning of the train control and power track and structures. Then we have Jeff Mitchell. He's the head of Profession Rail and Traffic Control Systems at Transport for London, also known as TfL. He has 40 years of signaling engineering experience and operations. Here with us today, we have David Carroll, Chief Operating Officer of APTA. He leads APTA Technical Services and Innovation Groups.
Great, thank you. And good morning. It's really a great honor to be here. I have had, on a personal note, 4 jobs in my life, and there are people in this room from all 4 of those jobs over an almost 40-year period. So it shows you it's a very small industry, and you have to treat it that way. But it's great to be here. Next slide. It was really an honor to do this peer review, and we appreciate Randy requesting that we do it. Our peer reviews bring in experts from the industry to opine on a very specific, focused topic. In this case, you've already been introduced to the peers. But our peers are selected specifically because of their expertise. In this case, with ATO, we selected folk from BART, from Transport from London, and from MARTA, because each of those systems are similar to the one you have. Each of them are familiar with or oversee the operation of ATO, both from the infrastructure perspective, from the training perspective, and from the operations perspective. In addition to the folks you've met, we also had Nancy Ellen Zusman, who was Chief Safety Officer at CTA, and also had a long career at FTA, so it brought in the safety aspect of this as well. Next slide. We were asked to look at several issues, again, bringing the expertise that these folks have in operating their own systems. WMATA has introduced safety improvements. How does that compare to industry standards? WMATA has introduced maintenance and engineering practices to be able to use ATO. How does that compare with industry standards? Similarly, there's a rollout plan for training, for testing. How does that compare? And finally, from a communications perspective, interacting with employees, interacting with the public, is there anything that the peers in their experience can recommend that be done? Next slide. We spent a week here. Your staff was phenomenal. Tiffany and her team are really tremendous, and we had a very informative week. We reviewed key documents to make sure that the maintenance documents, the procedures, the logs were in place. We inspected the ROC, the training facilities, the platform rooms, interviewed many of the key staff, ATU union leadership, and we provided a briefing to Randy and his team on our findings. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to summarize, actually to Roy to summarize the safety benefits from automatic train operations. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you, David. And so Chairman, committee members, BART and MARTA both were designed and built around the same period, and both have very similar ATO operations. We were built to employ ATO. The Transport of London also uses ATO, so we're very familiar with ATO operations. And it is very unique to have Metro WMATA having the same system and operating so many years in manual operations. The safest mode to operate any transit system is an ATO. If there are any ATO issues, those are resolved immediately for the important safety factors that ATO brings, which is red signal overrun violations are minimized because it is now taken out of the hands of human error. Station overruns are reduced because they're programmed into the automated functions of ATO. And it's also a customer convenience. When we're on a train and we're berthing or departing a station platform, ATO operations has a programmed station stop that's more reliably smoother than manual operations. And it also allows our operators to focus on keeping their eyes on the trackway, ensuring that trackway is clear, and better focus on the door closing and making sure that we have the proper door closing procedures instituted. Also, when we have the roadway worker protection rules and procedure in place, operating under ATO provides a safe work environment for our track workers and people working wayside. And now we'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Roy. Good morning to America, and good afternoon, UK, where I'm currently sitting in a wet, horrible day. I'd firstly like to echo what has been the team. The team were absolutely fantastic, very accommodating. And in order for us to get any decent level of findings from this, you know, we really needed open and honest dialogue with the team. And all the work that Tiffany and Jonathan have done to set that up and for us to meet the teams was truly fantastic, and we should be very proud of that. In terms of the technical infrastructure, from a technical perspective, we found that actually all the maintenance reports and all the way the teams are working on the system to be fine, and certainly in line with the best practice that I see around the globe with signalling maintenance. I think it's really important to say that ATO is part of the fundamental design of this system, as Roy has alluded to. It is not a new system. It is part of your system that you currently are choosing not to utilise. And I think that's a really important point that Tiffany is trying to get across, and we must listen to. In terms of additional work then, so we've established that from an engineering perspective, the railway is ready to return to ATO, but there's a few follow-up things to do. We need to review and update the current operating rules and procedures to accommodate the ATO, particularly about how we access the wayside. We need to advance the training curriculum, and that just needs to wait for the rules to finish because, you know, obviously if we create a training module and there's a change in the rules, then we need to reevaluate that training module. And the training and operating and control center employees all need to be brought up to speed with the training. And we anticipate that after talking to the team to be somewhere between 3 to 4 months. Now, what's really interesting and certainly something that WMATA should capitalise on is there's a massive support for going into ATO operations. You know, everybody, even those who are a little bit reticent about the accident, are really behind going into operations for various reasons. And now's the time to utilise, you know, their spirit in this. And that can only have been achieved by the work that Tiffany has done to communicate all this stuff through the team. And with that, I think I'll pass over to Adi.
Adi, you're on mute if you can hear us. Yep.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Adi Matthew. I'm the Director of Maintenance of Way here at MARTA. And I'm going to talk a little bit about your safety enhancements there at WMATA. First is the track circuits. So, of course, we know the Gen 2 track circuits that was originally the root cause of the incident. Those have all been removed. WMATA has also had an active project to replace older track circuits with a more up-to-date model. So that definitely speaks towards your root cause of the issue being mitigated and no longer a concern. Marker coils, they were updated, the positions and the maintenance practices for your marker coils. So that should improve your station stopping tremendously and make it more consistent as well. You know, right now you have operators doing it manually, so it may change from operator to operator how they stop. But of course, the station stopping accuracy will improve and the consistency will improve once you go to automatic. Preventive maintenance, critical PMs such as track circuit readings, shunting were verified and documented in WMATA's asset management system, Maximo. So we did have an opportunity to get out into the field and kind of did I wouldn't say an audit, but somewhat sort of, where we asked the technicians, the manager to go ahead and produce some information according to the PMs, just pick random track circuits, show us your documentation, show us how you document them in Maximo, show them that you are up to date on your PM compliance, and all of that was readily available. They were able to produce that easily and pretty much show that their preventive maintenance program is up to par. Train detection tool, we call it the loss of shunt tool as well. So the ROC procedure and the equipment is in place and in operation. So that's an excellent tool. It's a redundant system to your track circuits. If there is a loss of shunt, it alarms at your ROC, let them know what's going on. So if in some case you do have a track circuit failure, which is quite rare, or fails in an unsafe position, then your secondary system will detect that. And it's something that we are working on here at MARTA and actually modeling off of your guys' system. So definitely a great system to have. Next slide, please. So preventive maintenance procedures, again, we did go over those, did spot checks, and those were definitely up to par. Corrective action, did observe that issues are corrected by the technicians on site, and if possible, submitted to the engineering team for further investigation. So that relationship between your technical staff and your engineering staff is there. And that's always key to any program, as far as making sure if you have any issues that your engineering staff steps immediately in to help the frontline staff if there is something that comes up that they're unable to take care of in the field. So that's a perfect training. WMATA's techs receive frequent documented training in the form of OJT that keeps each tech current on the equipment they maintain. So we did have an opportunity as well to speak to some of the technical staff and did verify that they are given frequent training in the form of a OJT type training where your supervisors or whatever takes a tech out and goes through all of the ropes with him on the equipment and scores him on that. And that's documented as well. So excellent there. Staffing, the signal maintenance department is fully staffed as budgeted. That is very important as well, because that correlates directly to your PM maintenance and your corrective maintenance. Making sure that your PM compliance is 100%, making sure that your any issues that arise, you have enough staff to immediately rectify it. And overall, in our findings, WMATA's practices are in line with industry standards as verified by transit representatives from BART, MARTA, and the Transport for London. Excellent job on your maintenance and engineering practices. With that, I pass it over to David.
Just to summarize, the infrastructure is ready. I think once rules and the training curriculum are completed and training happens, you'll basically be compliant with industry practice. And again, I found it very interesting amongst the peers that we had. Having the kind of labor support that you have for this is unique. It's really a very powerful thing to leverage as you roll it out. You don't have to bring people kicking and screaming along the way. I think people are ready for this to happen. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. To David and the APTA team, there's no substitute for your expertise, and we really appreciate the depth, quality, and scope of this review. It's really helpful for us as we prepare for this transition. And to Tiffany and Shanita, thank you for your leadership. And at this time, what I'll do is open the floor to committee members if they have any questions or comments. Mr. Smedberg. Thank you.
I just have three quick questions. Seeing we haven't used this system in a while, software and hardware, are there updates that are needed to any of that before we move ahead with this, or are we good?
So all of the software updates that needed to be made to our rail cars, that is a part of the program that we're tracking, has been performed. All of the hardware updates, such as the placement of the marker coils, that also is a part of the program that we're tracking. We've completed the red line. We are completing the remaining lines as well. All of these items are also tracked as a part of our safety certification program.
If an operator sees something happening on the platform, can he or she override the ATO system? Should need be.
Yes, the operator does have the ability to stop the train and take it out of automatic and move to a manual mode operation.
Thank you. ROC operations, in addition to both your teams, what about the ROC? Is there training and other things that are needed to do there on that side?
Sure. So we are working in collaboration with the ROC, our safety and readiness team, to make sure that our training is comprehensive, covers any elements that would impact their day-to-day. So they are very well integrated into the program, and any rule changes will be encompassing of their teams as well.
And last, beyond training, what about certification and recertification, given some of the issues we've had?
Yes, all of the operators will be certified in ATO. We already have the program together. We have to make a few additional changes based upon any rule changes that may occur. So that will be a part of the certification moving forward for recertification and certification.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello?
Can I ask questions of our guests here from APTA? And I want to commend the WMATA staff too. That, you know, I've said this before, but this WMATA exceptionalism, this we're gonna just do this differently than everybody else, and that's okay. It's breaking out of that mindset this is phenomenal. Let's absolutely look at what our peers in the industry are doing and do that too. So I commend you for seeking this peer review, because this has been very informative. I have a question about, I heard, I think it was Adi say that some employees during the peer review were maybe a little reticent about the accident. And so I'm confused, or maybe it was Jeff that said this. So I'm a little confused about that. Was ATO the root cause identified by the NTSB?
No, it was not, and I think you can understand that, you know, there was an accident, and people who were around at that accident time have got, you know, feelings in their mind of how they work, but the root cause was absolutely the track circuit and not the ATO system. That is proven and written up in the NTSB report.
Okay, I mean, I am totally sympathetic to like people feeling traumatized by something that happened, but like we have to operate on the basis of evidence. And I mean, I am concerned to hear things like ATO is the safest mode to operate in. Well, then why aren't we operating in that mode? I mean, like that, this incident was a while ago and we've had some time to work through these feelings. So did the NTSB ever even tell us not to use ATO?
So no, that was a decision made by the leadership at the time to suspend use of ATO while the investigation was ongoing so that we could identify what the root cause was.
Okay. I'm absolutely not here to litigate the past, but like I think a clear path to that we should be taking in the future is starting to seem super obvious. One other thing that stood out to me from the peer review was I heard someone say we need to review how we access the wayside. Why do we need to review that? And how long will that take and what might change?
So it was me that said that, and I'll probably let Roy or Adi follow up. So all we're really saying is some of the rules that are applied during manual mode need to be just made sure okay for ATO mode, and Roy talked about the procedure that ROC uses to make that happen, and the training modules all include that. And actually, that we met the control center and they explained how they managed the access away. So, and it was precisely how expected to be. But Roy, I think you could follow.
Yes, basically, there's industry standards on roadway worker protection, which is what we call RWP. And when you're exclusively using manual operations, you're going to want to make sure that you go back to your rule books and make sure everybody has training on making sure that when trains are in the automatic mode, which in most systems operate at a faster speed, that those things are all taken into consideration and ensure that you're providing the safest work environment for roadway workers. And that's what we're looking at, is making sure that is being accomplished.
And Dr. Lowe, I could add to that, that's definitely something that we are looking at with safety and readiness as a part of our rule changes. So we are looking at how we're operating. We're looking at potential upcoming rule changes that safety is assessing, and we're having that comprehensive conversation to make sure that anything that we enact can be sustained through future changes.
Okay, and I think this is a critical piece here just because roadway worker protection, feel like I've been hearing that a lot from the WMSC. This topic has just been coming up like consistently since I joined the board. And so obviously something that we probably needed to take a look at anyway. It seems like this is a critical opportunity to really get this right and move forward with hopefully like a new and better paradigm.
Yes, and I think just that's critically important to recognize that statement that you said about getting it right. There is potential that in reviewing our rules and continuing to make sure that we are doing what's right and what's not what's fast, that there may be some flux at the initial institution or reutilization of ATO operations, but we're fully confident that we have the right teams, the right focus to make sure that we are fully restoring use of operations by the end of this year.
Okay, I think we do have to be prepared for the reality that what's happening right now is unprecedented in the sense that, like, we just heard about how there's all these systems all over the world that are using ATO, but we're the only system, I'm gathering, that's ever dropped out of ATO for so long. And so even our peers cannot really advise us on the critical issue of this transition from manual to ATO. And we have, there's bound to be, someday someone will be asking us what we learned.
Agreed. And to that point, we are definitely working hand in hand with the WMSC because we understand that there are concerns that they've raised. We are fully aligned with those concerns, and we want to make sure that we're having the conversation so that all parties are comfortable when it's time to go back. And there is, I'm sure, a host of lessons learned that we'll gather from this that we can have for future.
Well, I'm sure we'll share them with our peers in the industry. I mean, it seems like it's time to go back. Jeff, I was particularly struck by you saying that not using ATO is a choice. That one's going to be echoing in my head for a while. And I just, I think you're going about this exactly the right way. I'm so thankful that we have this team.
Thank you all. And I would just like to, again, thank our APTA peer review team. It was a great week of intense information, great insight, and we really appreciate them taking the time to come and help us make sure that we do this right. So thank you all.
Go ahead, Randy.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Teresa Episado, our Chief Safety Officer. I think, Teresa, do you mind coming up? You're much more eloquent than me when you explain this, but I think it's really clear, like, and Board Member Lowe brought up a great point about we made a choice as an agency, and let's not relitigate the past of the choice as much as it has gone on too long, and I appreciate the way probably Jeff framed it the best, and maybe it might have been Roy as well. Operating on ATO is safer than not operating on ATO. That is a world-class standard that's non-debatable in our industry. Part of our issue is we were built to be on ATO, and now we're on manual, and we weren't built for manual. So we've had a hodgepodge kind of approach of manual for over 10 years that, in my opinion, has led to a fair amount of our ongoing human factor safety issues. But I get, as you all know, Teresa says these things probably a little smoother and better than me. But Teresa, I mean, you and I've talked about this a lot. Maybe any context you want to give on that? Because I think it's really important for the board and the public to understand from the Chief Safety Officer's point of view of where we are from where we were and where we're trying to go.
Certainly. So when Metro was built, it was built as an ATO operation. All of our rules and procedures and training programs emphasized operations and automatic. When we paused the use of the automatic operations, Metro did not have a comprehensive rules and procedures and training program relative to manual operations. Manual operations were always used as a temporary process, and there were temporary procedures associated with that. In the intervening decade, Metro's approach to rules and procedures in manual mode have been responsive to human factors type incidents. So rules have been created in response to a procedural escape or an unintended outcome, which is resulting in the lack of a holistic and comprehensive rules paradigm for a manual operation. Part of the efforts that we've undertaken over the past year to improve the Metro Safety Rail Rules and Procedures Handbook has been to first draft a manual mode series of rules that will serve as establishing the baseline level of safety if and when we need to revert back to manual temporarily. But we've really pivoted and are emphasizing use of ATO. Throughout the tenure of my team and colleagues, we've determined in investigations that the preponderance of root cause issues in investigations are human factors issues. We have experienced a majority of our incidents that would have been preventable had ATO been in operation. Incidents like stop signal violations, speeding issues, station overruns, all of which would have been prevented and not been incidents had we been operating in ATO.
Hi, Teresa. If we could just also speak a little bit about how us as a board are reticent with regards to our team members doing this transition, and that there are health and safety implementations that have been put in place. Having concerns or want to talk about this with regards to this transition back. I know Randy has definitely made a push to make sure that those things are in place, and I want our team to know that, yes, this is a transition back, and we understand any feelings or traumas that you may be dealing with moving forward, but we have supports in place to help support that.
Yes, absolutely. So we've stood up as part of our safety certification and safety risk management processes, safety risk management working groups. We are standing up those groups which provide frontline employees the opportunity for two-way communication channels, raise concerns as well as receive information. We've also worked with the project team and have a robust multimodal communications program so that our employees know and understand not only the actions that are taken and the end results and impact to them, but also addressing the history, addressing any concerns or misinformation stemming from the history, and directing individuals towards resources that we've made available for them should they feel the need to seek any critical incident care or counseling services.
Thank you so much. We want everybody to know that our team is definitely the most important, and we appreciate everybody that has done part of this presentation today. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for the information that's been shared.
Thank you, Ms. Martin Proctor. Chair Smidberg.
Thank you. Teresa, I think looking at this material and hearing what everything, I think you made the most important point is that everything that we have experienced thus far, a vast majority of that would have been prevented if we were on ATO. And I think that's the key point here. As we move and think about safety and reliability and everything, this is clearly the way to go, and those things would have most likely been preventable under this system. I think that's just a really, really key point here. And I hope everyone, really clearly understands that, as you do, obviously, you and your team.
Paul, it's an interesting point, but I think it's like a little more nuanced than that. And that it sounded to me like what you were describing is that, like, for the last 10 years, like, our procedures have been like when you're playing Tetris and like a new piece comes down and you're like, I gotta, and then before you know it, it's like stacked up into this insane thing. And you would have a totally different situation if you just had all the pieces, looked at the space you had, and then like made a perfect little thing. Absolutely. We have got to get out of crazy stacked up Tetris and into a neat block. And
the kids with Tetrises?
Oh, well, I probably shouldn't have brought up this metaphor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees with
Yeah, board member, I've said this since the day I kind of joke one day, or people made a joke when I said, I want to take the drama down. Taking the drama down means just like, we just got to be normal. Do normal industry best practice stuff. This place was built. We're like one of the only railroads that's built completely to the same basic spec, right? So take a place like I worked in Boston, the blue line trains can't work on the red line can't work on the orange line. New York has some issues, Philly has issues. We were built to run this way. And we have to get back to running correctly. It's safer for our employees, it's safer for customers. So, that's why, and I hope, the board and the public will see where we're going about this. We've got independent experts from, Atlanta, San Francisco, London, and Chicago in to tell us as a status check, right? They don't work for us. They have no skin in the game, no interest except being professionals in our industry to tell us what we are doing right and what we need to do more of. Is there more work that we have to do? No question. But, I look at what the report is. I didn't participate in the report, any of this. I get reported out. And it's really good to see this team has got all of from the systems engineering point, we are where we need to be. We have to wrap up our rules and training. But our goal as an agency, if our goal as an agency is to be the safest system we can be, then we have to be an ATO to be the safest system.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Drummer. So there's a quote from a member of the Safety Commission saying, I hope Metro understands how complicated a return to ATO is going to be. It's not just a matter of flipping a switch and turning the system back on. I assume that you know that, but do you want to just address that for the record? And then I have a follow-up.
Certainly. So, and I'll defer to the project team to give a little bit of the specific detail, but Metro acknowledges and understands that there was a multi-year state of good repair improvement program. That technologically, the return to ATO was reliant upon a series of system improvements, all of which have been made. And Metro really hasn't publicized a lot of the work that we were doing behind the scenes to assure technical readiness. Now we're really pivoting our attention to look towards organizational readiness, acknowledging that technically the system is ready, so we could flip that switch. We need to make sure that the environment within which we'll be operating is appropriately learned and understanding and trained well to proficiency so that they can operate safely. We are now going to devote the remainder of our project timeline to really assuring that, to making sure that we look at every procedure, we look at every operating rule, and we look at every training module and make sure that our employees know and understand how they are to safely operate within the overarching structure of ATO.
So that may be a segue then. The one question I do have is, will going to ATO increase the burden on the ROC? And are we concerned at all about either staffing, training, or capability there in order to handle ATO?
It should not substantively increase the burden on the ROC. In essence, it will transfer some of the dedicated time that they're working. ATO in the ROC, again, it auto dispatches. So it will actually, in some cases, lessen the burden on our controllers by having the pre-programmed dispatch. Where there may be an increase in the burden to our controllers is with, for example, roadway worker protection, where they may have to establish protection points, but it won't be a marked increase in terms of the burden, it'll just shift. And relative to roadway worker protection, one thing that I'd like to emphasize is that operating an ATO provides us the ability to have a positive stop at the terminal points of work zones. Right now, the terminal points of work zones, while they're well demarcated and they're appropriately isolated, a train can physically enter a work zone. When you're operating an ATO, there will be a positive stop, and they will not be able to enter a work zone that's been properly established by our rail
And
track.
I assume that part of the training will be with the ROC controllers specifically on how this works.
Absolutely. In terms of the interface with the SCADA system, it shouldn't be terribly different from what they're dealing with today. It's just different decision-making and different actions that they'll have to undergo.
I think it's another point that, we've talked about, Teresa, on this, I think it's really important as well, is this will allow us to let the train circuits dictate speed on the right-of-way, which is, again, much safer than what we run today. Today, an operator is in manual with, you're supposed to run from here to here, say at 59 miles an hour. They could be at 55, they could be at 59. There's too much manual. In a great railroad operation, that track circuit is driving that train. And so if there is road workers ahead and we say that zone is, say, 20 miles an hour, no matter how much I push on that lever, it's going to 20 and no more. The other thing for the ROC, while the road worker piece, I think there might be a little additional, if we can cut out all the human factor issues, so if we reduce our station overruns, as example, red signal violations or those types of issues, then all of a sudden, not only is the workload on the dispatchers or the controllers at the center go down, the more dramatic, chaotic kind of stress-induced emergency management issues that have been in every NTSB report or WMSC report about how we do with incident management, communications, and emergency bus, all that kind of stuff also reduces. So the whole system, because Teresa's really trying to work with everyone on this whole safety management system approach. So each little piece allows us to run more holistically in a safer way. And I just think, Teresa and Brian and Andy have been talking a lot about that, and I just want to bring that point.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say I agree with everything that has been said, and the more I think about it, the more brilliant that Tetris analogy is. It really just encapsulates the way we've been operating for the last 14 years or so. Well done. I hesitate to bring it back to the technical, but I do have a question. I don't think I realized before preparing for this meeting that the track circuit system and the UPO system are different systems or separate systems. The track circuit being what was identified as part of the root cause of the accident, and then ATO not being Can you just address that a little bit? Do those two systems interact and how, like, apparently they are separate, which I hadn't realized.
Sure. So automatic train control, you can consider that as the umbrella, right? That's the overarching system. Underneath that, there's three different subsystems. There's automatic train operations, which is really just the mode in which we're choosing to operate. We can be in manual mode or we can be in a semi-automatic mode. There's automatic train protection, which speaks to your vital systems, your track circuits. That's what protects your distancing, your braking, your acceleration and deceleration. And then there's automatic train supervision. That is the use of our SCADA systems to allow our rail traffic controllers to have visual ability to see and have some control over train movement within the system. So there are three different subsystems, often conflated, but they are three different operating subsystems.
The two that aren't the automatic train operations are in operation today.
Correct. So the automatic train protection system, which is the system that utilizes those track circuits, when the accident happened, that was due to faulty generation of a track circuit. That system, those trains removed, that system has been in place, utilized to safely allow manual mode trains to move since that time. It still is the underlining protection system that makes sure that the trains are always distanced appropriately.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. Mr. Goldman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we have our panel here and they've traveled virtually a long distance, we take advantage of their expertise a little bit more. Hopefully we'll avoid their Tetris expertise and stick to their expertise on the automatic train control system. As I read your report, you seem to say and conclude that one of your findings was that WMATA should incorporate additional time into its proposed implementation schedule to update operation rules and training. I think I understand what is meant by update operational rules, and that's been discussed. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what you meant by training. In the transportation mode that I'm most familiar with, aviation, if a pilot is moving from one aircraft type to another aircraft type, this retraining usually includes some training simulator and then some live training up in the air, up in airspace with a check pilot. And so I want to ask the experts, is that the kind of retraining that you would anticipate WMATA would implement in order to bring its train operator workforce up to speed to be able to handle ATO in the GOA2 mode? I don't know if David wants to suggest someone to answer that, or
actually, Roy does a lot of this and has a very similar system.
So Wagler from BART, basically we went in and talked to the trainers in the train operator training department and found that you're very well suited to get your operators trained based on the amount of simulators you have already in use. You have some high quality, high technically capable simulators that give your operators an opportunity to operate the simulator in automatic, and then also the hands-on training makes it a very great training that's complete, that gives them what they need to operate the train safely. So I believe that you have all the tools in place, and the trainers have the material and putting the material together to put a great training program together to make sure you're providing safe operations.
And the employees we spoke to urged both obviously the classroom simulator training, but also the on-the-road training, and that is clearly part of the program that's planned. And that way they can work through all the different scenarios that they might face when they're actually out there with the decision as to whether do I have to go back to manual or stay in ATO.
When you do training on a live train operation, do you do it on a train that's non-revenue, or do you do it on a train that's carrying revenue passengers, but you sort of have a check pilot or an instructor watching over what the train operator is doing that's being trained?
What we do at BART for our new employees, because all our employees are trained in automatic mode, is they're trained on the simulators, and then they are given time to operate a non-revenue train, and with a trainer that is certified to operate the train in automatic mode. I imagine that's the same type of training that WMATA is putting together.
That's my follow-up question. So what are you planning to duplicate the kind of training that MARTA does? It is MARTA, right? No, it's BART, that BART does for training or retraining employees to ATO.
Yes, we are. We're planning to use the simulators. We're planning to give them time in cab during non-revenue time in order for them to get familiar with the system nuances and the technology.
Okay. Final question, just going back to in ATO mode, does the operator open the doors and close the doors? Does the operator do both of those functions?
In ATO mode, our doors will be in auto manual, which means the doors will automatically open, but the operators will close the doors.
So the ATO, when the train is in the station within the platform area that it's supposed to be, then as part of the ATO system, that will automatically open the doors.
That's correct.
But the closing of doors is a function for the actual operator.
That's correct.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you very much. Appreciate the report and appreciate the guidance we got from the experts who have virtually traveled a great distance to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. And my last question is for David. So David, understanding this is not your first rodeo with regard to peer reviews, very impressive process. And a lot of positive discoveries here at Metro. There are some lessons learned over the years in ATO transitions, I'm sure. Is there an intent to leave some of those lessons learned for us to anticipate as we prepare to execute?
One of the great things about our industry, transit industry in the U.S. and internationally as well, is the ability to share, benchmark what others are doing, share training modules, share experience and data. And we have urged WMATA to do that, and BART and MARTA in particular, who have similar systems, have many materials that are available to share. For example, how do we train our employees? What do we do for worker protection? How do we deal with different situations? All of that material they have made available to WMATA, and that should help greatly in this transition process.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for this rich dialogue. It's really going to help us move forward.
Thank you and best of luck.
At this time, we will transition to our next set of presentations. Thank you very much. Jamie Johnson and his team will address the 7000 series update.
Hello, Chair Drummer. Thank you, members of the board. Good morning. With me today is Shashil. Shashil, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for your time. My name is Shashil Ramirez. I'm the Vice President and Chief Mechanical Officer here at Metro.
And there's also Dave Diaz from Hatch LTK, who's with us virtually. Dave, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is David Diaz. I'm Senior Vice President at Hatch LTK, and pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you, Dave. And I'm Jamie Johnson, Assistant Chief Safety Officer. So today, Shashil and I will provide you an update on the NTSB investigation, explain the probable cause and how Metro intends to address it, and then lastly, explain the next steps of ensuring the 7000 series continues in service and being safe. Excuse me. Great. So the NTSB assumed control of the investigation into the probable cause in the hours after the 7000 series derailment on October the 12th in 2021. There were no injuries and all passengers were safely evacuated. Last week, on February the 28th, the investigation reached a significant milestone because NTSB published on their website 48 key documents related to the investigation. It's worth noting that although lots of information is now public, Metro is still bound by the NTSB to not disclose information that has not been released publicly. This measure is intended to protect the integrity of the investigation and its findings. Included in this batch of documents last week are a set of factual reports from the NTSB. These reports detail what happened and do not explain why it happened. They include a short summary alongside reports detailing what happened with the train, with the track, and Metro's actions in response to the incident. To get to this point in the investigation, there has been extensive work by all agencies party to the investigation, and Metro is extremely grateful for their expertise. But I'm pleased to say that Metro really has stepped up and taken the lead, as you would expect. We've spent over $8 million on investigating this derailment and thousands of hours. A lot of it has been spent by Shashil, the Chief Mechanical Officer, and his team. This investigation has remained a strategic and operational priority throughout. The investigation can be bucketed into 3 parts. The first is the collection analysis of data. With over 470 requests, multiple analyses have been completed to understand the rail car and the track data we have available. The investigation formed leading theories based on industry research and has methodically eliminated the theories as the analyses have been completed. The second part is what I call the lab testing, where specific pieces of equipment like wheel sets have been examined or run under observation in a car maintenance facility. And the third bucket of activity has been on-train testing, where we've attached monitoring equipment to trains and run them through the Metro's system to observe how they behave under certain conditions. And it's important to note that specific investigative activities are still in motion, to include studies of specific elements of the track structure and how they act in certain conditions. The NTSB now moves to drafting the second major part of their investigation, namely the analysis, findings, and recommendations, or the why, what we've learned and what we need to do to improve. This second part is due to be published later this year. However, and due to the strong working relationship between NTSB and Metro, NTSB included 3 reports that would not usually have been included in this phase of release. There is one report from engineering firm Hatch LTK, and we have Dave Diaz here with us today, a second report from transportation research specialist MXV, and a third from the 7000 series manufacturer Kawasaki. These 3 independent reports go beyond simply what happened and explain why it happened. NTSB releasing these reports earlier than normal in their investigative process is very important for us because it gives Metro the green light to discuss with you, the WMSC, and the public what our next steps are for the 7000 series. I'll now hand over to Shashil to explain what these reports tell us about the probable cause and how we're going to fix it.
Thank you, Jamie. As Jamie mentioned, the report and the investigative process really centered around data gathering and then static and dynamic testing. All the parties that were involved in the investigation participated collaboratively in all of these processes, and the outcome of that investigative process is the identification of the potential cause and the proposed solution for that. The potential cause is a broad agreement of all parties that there is a loss of contact pressure between the wheel and axle. So a wheel set assembly is typically produced by pressing a wheel onto the axle in what's called a force fit or a press fit. This process introduces a wheel bore, which is of smaller diameter than the axle wheel seat. And it requires pressing tonnage in order to insert the wheel onto the wheel seat of the axle. It's very common practice in North America for press fits to be applied to all wheel set assemblies. This pressing process introduces a radial contact pressure between the wheel and the axle, and this pressure is what maintains the fit of the assembly. The investigation found that during operation of the 7K fleet, there is a loss of contact pressure induced between the axle and the wheel. And the solution for this is an increase of the wheel interference fit, which will also increase the pressing tonnage. And this solution has been arrived through statistical analysis of data, as well as collaborated with the testing that was conducted and documented in the reports. I'll turn it over to Dave Diaz of Hatch LTK to speak on the solution.
Thanks, Shashil. I want to emphasize here a couple of points. The analysis that we as a team, the Hatch LTK team, the WMATA team, and everybody, it was done at the highest level of professionalism and thoroughness. All the load cases, static and dynamic cases, finite element analyses, all the work was performed by professional engineers that have been doing this kind of work around the world. We've used industry standards and peer reviews of other agencies to conclude our findings. So, I want to emphasize that this was done in a very thorough, holistic manner by a very professional team. This was not an isolated incident in terms of its occurrence in industry. It's happened at other agencies and other railroads, and the solutions that we've come forward with are not uncommon. The recommendation to increase the tonnage force and the interference fit is a common solution to this case. And that also is something I want to emphasize. I'd like to say in my nearly 40 years of doing this kind of work, I'm very proud of this team and the conclusions we reached and the approach that they went. It was very thorough, very data-driven approach. So with this, I'm going to turn it right back to Shashil.
Thank you, Dave. So I think there are two key takeaways there. One is that all the parties that were involved in the investigation do concur that the root cause is a loss of contact pressure. And the parties also agreed that the proposed mitigation of increasing the interference fit and depressing tonnage will address the root cause of the issue. Also importantly, to Dave's point, the proposed fix is not unique to Metro. This is something that is very standard in the industry. It has been applied at other agencies with good success. So that segues nicely to the next slide, which is the implementation of the solution. Metro staff, that's the rail division along with SAFE, is working with partnering with the WMSC to finalize our wheel set replacement program. And this program is being driven by the results of the investigation, as well as the continuing data analysis that's being conducted by the team and submitted to the WMSC, as part, including an engineering review that was conducted by the newly established Vehicle Track Working Group to ensure that there's a collaborative work between the vehicle and track divisions and the SMEs to ensure that we are taking a holistic, systematic approach to the solution. This process will be safety driven. We are safety certifying the process of pressing every wheel set on the 7K fleet. And the cost of this process is being developed along with the timeline based on the resource and schedule analyses that are being conducted.
And just to add on the safety certification topic, it's obviously my responsibility to ensure that occurs. There are two aspects to the safety certification because we want to be absolutely sure that any risks that exist in the changes we're making are identified and mitigated. There's with the program, the process itself, and then there's each train, each rail car, I should say, that receives that mitigation will be certified, will receive a stamp from safety in practice to say that every step has been conformed with and is now safe to be released and that mitigation is complete. So there are two parts, the process itself and then the actual individual wheel sets on each rail car. So now we'll move to a summary of where we're at with the final return to service plan. So WMSC's December 2021 order requires Metro to lay out its return to service plan for the 7000 series fleet. The safe return of the rail cars to service began in May 2022, and the whole fleet is currently in service. Each wheel set is currently being measured every 7 days. Since May, over 13 million miles have been run and 20,000 measurements have been taken, with no movement in the wheels being measured beyond the margin of error within the procedure. Metro is now collaborating closely with WMSC, so WMSC is in a position to approve the fourth and final version of the return to service plan. There are some key elements on this slide that we are advocating for. The first being that we want to continue to take advantage of the industry-leading wheel set measurement procedure that Shashil and his team have built. It is precise as it uses a digital dial gauge and it puts safety first with extra steps to ensure accuracy, conformance, and quality analysis. as I have said previously to the board, we are committed to continuing to measure. That is absolutely our baseline moving forward. Number two, we currently measure, as I said, every 7 days, and quite rightly, we have taken a gradual and conservative approach to extending the time between measurements. However, the measurement and performance data point strongly towards extending the time between measurements. Whatever decision is made on this point will be driven by the data and will always include a buffer to ensure a conservative and very safe approach. Number three is that Metro has made progress with installing units next to the track that can rapidly measure wheel sets as the train passes at normal speed. Testing and development is ongoing, but we may have the option to enhance our ability to measure in the near future. And lastly, Metro firmly believes the return to service plan will end for every rail car when their wheel sets are replaced as per the wheel set replacement program Shashil just described. All the details on this slide are a collaborative effort with WMSC to reach approval for the path forward, and we're working hard with WMSC to conclude this process this month. That's our ambition. So that concludes our presentation. The three of us are here to take your questions.
To Jamie, Shashil, and Dave, thank you very much for this enlightening and confidence-building presentation. At this time, I'm going to find out if we have any committee members. Okay. So I'll start with Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you. Jamie, just one quick question. Whom exactly makes the safety certification? Is that you and Teresa? Is that Shashil's team? Is it Mr. Diaz's team? Whom exactly makes that determination or gives it that stamp?
It's the Department of Safety. However, what we're looking to do is to bring in some independent expertise to be part of our team. We think that's really important. Be speaking to people like Chief Operating Officer Brian Dwyer, who knows a lot of people in the industry who can really help us to get the right people in that safety certification team. But the answer to your question is the Department of Safety.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Lowe?
My question is actually for Mr. Diaz. I heard you say that this exact kind of problem has happened before at other agencies with other kinds of trains, maybe. And so that's part of what gives you confidence that this is the cause and that we know what the solution is. I guess my frustration is well, if it's happened before, why did it happen here? Why didn't somebody prevent this from happen, Kawasaki, or I don't know, why did this happen? And then we've been running all these trains for 2 years now, essentially and doing all these measurements to see if it's gonna happen again, and nothing has happened, actually. So I guess I'm just I'm trying to get a more sort of layperson sense of does this really happen though?
Yeah, let me try to break it down and kind of explain the history behind this. Wheel press loads at agencies in particular are somewhat of handed down practices, standards that get handed down and handed down and handed down. This particular case, in my opinion, is that there was an old practice that needed to be updated with the evolution of the new vehicle. And it has happened in other agencies. So WMATA is not alone. It's happened in Canada, in particular at Go Transit, where one of our staff members had some direct involvement with this, where the weight and the load factors of a vehicle increase as the vehicle technology changes and more weight gets applied to a particular car type. And then they eventually have to realize that, we have to apply a higher press fit to the wheel to make sure the wheel stays in place. Unfortunately, the engineering that should have probably been done to make that determination at the time the car was built, didn't get done for whatever reason, and I'm not here to judge that. But the engineering analyses that goes into determining what the proper tonnage is sound, and the analysis that is used by other railroads such as Amtrak, other transit agencies, where we have adopted the AAR standard for wheel tonnage based on the load characteristic of the wheel. That's what's applied in other places, was not applied here at WMATA. WMATA's was an internal standard that probably needed to be updated and was not. So the analyses that went into determining cause was very much an engineering study to confirm what we already felt we knew, which was that the pressing tonnage was under the criteria that it should have been for the weights and loads that this train set was implying to it. And in my experience, we went through all the engineering to determine this. It backed up what our gut told us. And the recommendation going forward to increase the interference fit and the tonnage is not only backed on the engineering that we did, but backed on the history of this type of issue in the industry, which has happened, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. That was extremely helpful. So,
no, if I can just add to what Dave said. We've looked at the industry standards and the industry best practices as part of the investigation. And one thing that I'd like to caution everyone about is there is no direct applicability of the incidents that transpired at other agencies to that of Metro. And that's purely a function of their car designs and their wayside being very different from ours. So there are a lot of lessons learned and engineering practices we can take away, but it is not accurate to say this has happened elsewhere, so we should just adopt that fix, because that fix could potentially introduce adverse impacts, which we clearly went through and also addressed, right? The other issue with the industry, and Dave briefly touched on it, is the AAR standards, which are widely applied to the industry, are specific to AAR type cars and to AAR type axle geometries. Metro does not have an AAR type geometry for our axle. So those standards are not directly applicable to Metro cars, nor are they appropriate.
tell me more. What kind of car do we have?
So Metro obviously is a transit property. We are not a AAR property. So all AAR, commuter rail types, Amtrak, they are governed and mandated to follow AAR. So for us, it is a recommended best practice. And what we found with the AAR standards is because the standard does not address specifically our axle geometry, there's additional work that was conducted as part of the investigation, specifically with the wheel hub length, in order to derive the appropriate interference fit and press tonnage. Put another way, we couldn't just go to an industry standard and say, yep, the information's here, let's apply that.
Okay. I think the key question at this point is not just, hey, are we sure our plan to fix this is going to fix it? This sounds like the right plan. But are we baking all these lessons learned into the 8Ks so that we're going to feel super good about the interference fit and the press tonnage of those?
Yes, so there's a very defined process where we've transferred lessons learned from the 7K to the 8K, and that process is also underway now that we have confidence in the wheel set replacement program and the conclusion of the investigation. So yes, we are applying the lessons learned from this into the 8K program moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman?
Your committee members? No. Okay, thank you. In your presentation and on the slide identifying potential causes, and in your discussion here, you talked about two concepts. One is the press tonnage, which I think I understand, which is the pressure under which the axle is attached to the wheel. But then you've talked about another concept called wheel interference fit. And you've sort of made them interchangeable. But I think, well, I'll ask you, is there a difference between those two concepts? And could you distinguish the difference between those two concepts and how they work together?
Yes, thank you for the question. Can we go back to the wheel set geometry slide?
It's the slide that says identifying potential cause in the solution.
So on the upper right, what we've tried to pictorially define is the wheel, which is the gray and black, and then the axle, which is the blue and the dark blue. So the interference fit is purely a function of geometry. The axle wheel seat has a known diameter. It's 5.62 for Metro. And the wheel bore, or the diameter of the bore, is machined to achieve your interference fit, because it's a difference of the wheel diameter and the axle diameter. Yes, thank you. That's much more eloquent than I put it.
I appreciate Dr. Lowe's plain English translation.
Yes. So there are a multitude of factors that affect pressing tonnage. There is the friction coefficient. There is the roughness of the axle surface and the wheel. It is generally true that a higher interference fit will result in a higher press tonnage. Correct.
All right, so they work together, but the fix for the problem is the increased press tonnage. It doesn't require any change to the wheel interference fit.
It's both. So it does require a change to the interference fit, which will be increasing. And as a result of that increase, it also drives an increase in the pressing tonnage.
Okay, better understood. All right, now just shifting a little bit, when all this happened last week, there was a statement by the Safety Commission spokesperson that said the investigation has shown that there are likely multiple contributing factors to all of this. The design need for the axle assembly can affect one of the factors, but it doesn't affect all the factors. And then the article goes on, and I don't know if this is part of the WNSC statement, says, the report raised questions about Metro's tracks, including the positioning of restraining rails that help trains navigate turns and the unusual speed at which railcar wheels are wearing down. So my question is, if the Transportation Safety Board concludes that this was one of the contributing factors, and in the area I'm familiar with, aviation, usually you have a mess of contributing factors that produce an accident, human error, mechanics, weather, whatever it is. So if that turns out to be a factor that contributed to the accident, the derailment here on the Blue Line train, is the fix that you've presented of the increased pressure the fix for that problem as well? Or is the fix that you've presented only a solution for the press tonnage issue? And I don't know if, I'll listen to your response, but I want to hear from Mr. Diaz as well, whether he thinks that.
Yeah, I can handle this one as well. I mean, the increase in the tonnage basically strengthens the bond between the wheel and the axle and will ultimately help in all load cases. Whether it be restraining rail or any other rail-induced feature, this increased tonnage and interference fit will ultimately strengthen that bond and mitigate any impacts that the rail or any of the rail features may have on the situation.
All right, so you're saying, Mr. Diaz, that there's no need for a second fix if the NTSB concludes that a contributing factor was this positioning of the restraining wheels?
Yeah, that is as it relates to the force on the axial load on the wheel itself. Restraining rail by itself, if not properly installed, can cause other issues that we can get on a whole tangential conversation about. But as it relates to the wheel and the axle and how it's been behaving, the increased tonnage and any kind of load that this restraining rail would put on it would be mitigated by this situation if we go down this path of solution.
Thank you. I'm just trying to, I assume you agree with that, but I'll let you say whether you agree with that analysis.
Absolutely. No, Mr. Goldman, we do. But I think from the investigation point of view, the investigation is continuing. This is a big milestone, which gives us a lot of information to act when it comes to the potential causes that relate to the rail car. There are ongoing studies that we are leading and NTSB are supervising. So we're not going to take our eye off the ball. If there's information that becomes apparent in the coming months, we will, of course, act on that. And we're also, with the WMSC on our shoulder, we are looking at the track very closely as these 7000 series are running. So really, it's still an open book, and I wouldn't want to try and predict the future.
So there may be a second or a supplemental fix coming down the road relating to the restraining rails at some point in time, if you internally and the NTSB and WMSC conclude that that's part of the problem, the root cause of the accident.
Potentially, but that doesn't undermine the impact of this fix on the problem.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Ms. Babers?
Thank you for this presentation. Just a real quick question. So the repressing of each wheel set, that process is a one-time process for each wheel set, correct? And of course, you all will be doing some type of continued wheel set measurements at some interval to ensure that nothing needs to be repressed again on a wheel set.
So to the first question, the wheel set replacement program will be a one-time fix for the 7K series. But for full disclosure, please note that wheel pressing is a routine rail activity that's done as part of our just PM and CM, right? So this is not a new process for Metro by any means. Regarding the second question, as Jamie commented, we are committed to continuing a robust measurement program.
Okay, thank you.
Shashil, it might be helpful to talk about how long we interval right now on the other components of the fleet for the board member to understand that, because I think the point's really important. Like, we press wheels, I mean, every single day, or certainly very regularly. Most of our shops have the equipment, or X amount of shops have the equipment to do it. This is part of running a railroad, and so no one should think, oh my God, they have to do this new thing called press wheels. That's just part of running a railroad. But the intervals that you do as the chief mechanical officer on the legacy fleet, the 6, the 3s, and the 2s,
Sure.
maybe it might be helpful for the board and everyone to understand that.
Very good. So rail wheels are almost akin to the tires on your car. They wear over time. So generally, based on that wear, we get about 5 years of service life out of a wheel set. And at that point, we have to press new wheels on to the wheel set assembly. So generally, absent wheel flats or other issues, we will get 5 years out of a wheel set. And as part of that process, we are continuously pressing wheels. So it's a daily activity, not as a fix, but it's just part of our routine maintenance. Sorry, Andy. So the back-to-back interval for our legacy fleets, the 2K, 3K, and 6Ks, are every 60 days right now. The 7Ks are at 7 days, as you all are aware. What we have found as part of the investigation is that even at our 60-day interval, we are much more conservative relative to the rest of the industry. So the fact that we're doing a 7-day interval is even much more conservative than anything else that the other peer agencies are doing.
Okay. Thanks again for this excellent presentation and dialogue. And Mr. Chair, with no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Letourneau to begin the Finance and Capital Committee meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drummer, and hopefully it will be a fairly short Finance and Capital meeting, as we only have one item on our agenda. First, we'll start with the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now to the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of our February 9th meeting. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. The one item on our agenda is approval of the public hearing staff reports for 3 projects in Virginia that involve changes to transit facilities at metro stations at East Falls Church, Franconia Springfield, and West Falls Church, as well as approval to amend the mass transit plan to make the proposed changes. I was supposed to turn the floor over to Liz Price, but I see Stephen here. Okay. Let's do that.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Segerlin, and I'm a director in the Office of Real Estate Development. The purpose of the presentation today is to seek board approval of the compact public hearing staff reports for proposed changes at 3 metro stations in Virginia that will improve operations, safety, and station area connectivity and enable joint development. This item is also requesting approval of amendments to the mass transit plan as required by the compact to execute these changes. For background, staff have been coordinating with the jurisdictions on these projects and plans since 2015, leading to prior board approvals in December 2020 to execute a joint development agreement at West Falls Church and to hold compact public hearings for these 3 stations between 2020 and 2021. The public hearing events were then held between July and October 2022, and the staff reports were published for a 10-day public comment period this past month in February 2023. Regarding the public hearing events, they were held virtually for East Falls Church in Franconia, Springfield, and using a hybrid virtual in-person format for West Falls Church as changes to COVID-19 regulations permitted. Prior to each event, staff organized a targeted marketing and media campaign to notify customers in station area neighborhoods about the proposed changes and hearing dates using print and online sources, in addition to creating a web page, sending emails to community groups, posting signs, and in-person outreach at stations. Customers participating virtually could join using a Zoom link or by telephone, and there was also a live YouTube broadcast. Comments or public testimony could be provided during the hearing, but also using an online survey form. This feedback was summarized in the staff reports along with responses to concerns and was posted online. In the following slides, I'll give a brief highlight of each project and the staff reports. At East Falls Church, the proposed changes will improve bus operations and customer safety, which were needs identified in a 2015 study published by Metro in Arlington County. The county has since secured the funding for the project, and construction is anticipated to begin in late 2023 and complete in 2024. The proposed changes include adding 3 bus bays to reduce congestion and accommodate future growth in bus services, relocating ADA accessible parking closer to the station entrance, and narrowing the intersection at the bus loop entrance to improve customer safety. The public hearing was held on July 21, 2022. Out of the 81 comments that were received, 94% of the comments supported the project or did not express an objection, while 6% opposed. The most significant concerns expressed were about protection for customers during inclement weather and poor quality of lighting and sidewalk conditions. The project will address these by installing new, larger bus shelters and replacing lighting and sidewalks, as well as narrowing the crosswalk at the bus loop entrance. There were also comments about the need for more park and ride spaces, which this project scope did not propose to change, but is something staff could consider in the future. As a result, staff recommends the board approve the proposed changes as originally envisioned. At Franconia Springfield, the proposed changes are to extend Frontier Drive over the rail tracks to the GSA warehouse area that currently has no direct vehicular or pedestrian access to the station. The proposal also includes other operational and safety improvements for bus and parking customers. The need for this project was identified by Fairfax County in their 2008 Springfield Connectivity Study Framework Plan. And then VDOT began coordinating with Metro staff on the concept designs in 2017 and began raising funds for the project, which is still underway. VDOT's current schedule anticipates construction between 2025 and 2027 if all funds are secured. The proposed changes for this project include adding new signalized intersections and reconfiguring access to the park and ride garages to accommodate the Frontier Drive extension, as well as adding 3 bus bays and a new bus layover facility to address existing bus loop congestion and accommodate future growth in bus services. It also includes eliminating a pickup drop-off area that exists between the bus bays and the park and ride garage to resolve traffic congestion and safety issues resulting from customers double parking. The public hearing was held on July 12, 2022. Out of the 272 comments received, 57% of the comments supported the project or did not express an objection, while 42% opposed. The most significant concerns expressed were about removal of the pickup drop-off area and bike and pedestrian facility conditions. The project will address these by directing pickup drop-off customers to use the existing 111-space Kiss and Ride lot on the ground floor of the parking garage and adding new or expanded bicycle and pedestrian pathways to the station. As a result, staff recommends the board approve the proposed changes as envisioned. For the last of the stations, at West Falls Church, the proposed changes will enable 1 million square feet of mixed-use development comprising of 900 housing units, of which 10.5% will be affordable to households earning 50 to 70% of area median income, and 120,000 square feet of commercial office and retail space. This opportunity became possible only after the Silver Line opened in 2014. That led to a 75% drop in ridership at West Falls Church as customer demand patterns redistributed to the newly opened metro stations. As these trends became clear, staff began coordinating with Fairfax County in 2018 on an amendment to their comprehensive plan, leading to this configuration for the redevelopment of the site and the proposed changes, which include reducing the quantity of bus bays, park and ride, and kiss and ride spaces to align with demand and make land available for housing and commercial uses, as well as eliminating on-street metered parking that is currently managed by Metro, since the new development will have its own on-street parking. Then in 2021, the board approved the execution of a joint development agreement with Falls Church Gateway Partners Metro LLC. The proposed changes will be funded by the joint developer and Metro, and reconstruction of the transit facilities is anticipated to occur in phases between 2024 and 2026. The public hearing was held on October 19, 2022. Out of the 168 comments received, 79% of the comments supported the project or did not express an objection, while 21% opposed. The most significant concerns expressed were about reductions in park and ride and bus bay capacity. Staff addressed these proposed changes in the public hearing environmental evaluation report by providing a detailed analysis of historic utilization and future growth projections for parking and bus services, which formed the basis of the capacity recommendations. However, these results were developed and vetted in coordination with Fairfax County staff as part of their comprehensive plan amendment adopted in 2021. But in appreciation that trends change, the site plan preserves areas that can accommodate expansions of bus and parking capacity if needs are identified in the future. As a result, staff also recommends the board approve the proposed changes as originally envisioned. With that summary of the three projects, I'll return to the board action and staff recommendation, which is for approval of the compact public hearing staff reports for East Falls Church, Franconia Springfield, and West Falls Church, and associated amendments to the mass transit plan. This concludes our presentation, Mr. Chairman, and I'll hold for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Just going back to the Franconia Springfield one, do you think that it's possible that maybe customers don't realize that the Kiss and Ride lot is there because it's in the garage?
I think that's part of it. So in the staff report, we had some minor design recommendations about improving signage with the change so that customers can see that that Kiss and Ride lot is actually ahead or beyond where that existing pickup drop-off area is
They just
today.
are used to going to the first point that they come to.
Exactly.
'Cause that is a big number to oppose something.
Yep.
But other questions from committee members first? Mr. Goldman.
Yes, Steve, in your presentation on West Falls Church, you move away, or at least the reduction in the parking spots moves away from a historic WMATA policy of requiring a one-for-one substitution. And I would just appreciate if you could just state what are the factors that sort of led staff to consider moving away from that historic policy, which I formally support.
Thank you so much for the question. It's actually been a new approach as we've been discussing. The 2018 Joint Development Policy Update changed our approach to adjusting the capacity of transit facilities and focused on a ridership or utilization-based analysis. So this was one of the first projects that really did that in a comprehensive manner and looked at historic trends of utilization over the past decade, both for rail and for parking, but also looked at household growth rates that was in the park shed or station area where customers were coming from, and did a projection looking forward, saying if this is where we are today, and this many households are expected to come in the future that may become parking customers, and we built up our utilization from there. The utilization analysis is also based on pre-COVID data rather than the current utilization post-COVID.
Okay, so this is not just a one-off policy for West Falls Church. This would have applicability to any joint development project in the area, DC, Maryland, as well as in Virginia.
And as we start bringing more projects with joint development to the board for compact public hearings, I think this is going to be a regular cadence you'll hear about this parking demand analysis.
As I say, I fully support that, and I think you'll find some proposals coming forward in Montgomery County that want to take advantage of this change as well. Thank you.
Okay, other committee members? And Dr. Lowe and then Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I just did Mr. Letourneau's point about the Kiss and Ride being inside the garage. Like, it's probably just that people are like, I can't pull into the garage or I'm going to get charged. So just like making it clear that a free Kiss and Ride is in there. I think it can't just say Kiss and Ride, it has to be like free. You don't need to tap your card to pull in here.
And the pedestrian bridge that goes from the garage to the station, I think in part is blocking that view to that Kiss and Ride. And so one of the things we talked about with VDOT was having a large sign on the garage, around the pedestrian bridge, saying Kiss and Ride, pick up, drop off, parking ahead.
Perfect. Okay, so my only feedback on, this is all great job. But I think that in the future, as we're thinking about not just these joint development opportunities, but like I know that part of your department's responsibilities are like the bicycle parking facilities that are at stations. I think that there is a huge missed opportunity here to like totally rethink the way that we do bike parking. It feels like it was a decade ago that we were piloting a new approach to bike parking at the College Park Metro Station. That's an awfully long time to pilot something. Where is the next generation of bike parking where you can park by the hour? This station, for example, is 2 blocks from the W&O trail. Missed opportunity. I know that we can't do everything at the same time, but when are we going to get on this?
So actually, as part of this project, in the plaza area in front of the Metro Station entrance, the project will improve bicycle parking. We've still been working through in coordination with the county what that looks like. Is it a combination of lockers and racks, or is there a secured bicycle parking kiosk like the bike and ride facilities we've seen in the past? So those are details that we're continuing to work through. What is the right mix? There are also significant bicycle pathways that are being added as part of this plan to make sure that connection from the WO&D trail is available to the Metro Station.
But the secure parking piece, it's so key, and it's got to be something other than lockers you subscribe to using a lease.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been working through how to make the secured bicycle parking facilities more cost-effective. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't finalized the exact product that we're going to do at West Falls Church just yet, but we're going to get there.
Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you. Steve, nothing, and also just so people are aware, it is a sort of a rather large number to oppose something, but I think Matt is right. It's really more about the change than anything else.
Yeah.
And this is really strongly supported by the county and VDOT. This is really important development. Really, just in comment, a general comment here, is we start to look at things differently. Prince George's County recently had a tour along some of the lines there where, you know, you've got these brownfields. Listening to this presentation and thinking about how we've looked at real estate, you know, or how we've traditionally looked at it, and your department is real estate, whatever the title is, but really to me, this is more about asset allocation, asset utilization. I think we've really got to look at it differently and, you know, maybe even change the title of the department from real estate. While at their heart, they are real estate deals and you're working with the county or cities and what have you, but it's really more about asset utilization and optimization than it is just a straight on real estate deal. So maybe a little different way of looking at things in the future. Or
Yeah, Chair.
changing the department's name.
Chair, I think we are lucky to have some great talent in this department. And between Liz, Stephen, they know what they're doing and they're doing a really good job. And the board, you know, has been involved heavily in that strategic plan. I think what I've heard loud and clear in my first 7 months here is we need to put even more energy to activate that plan even faster. Because it's not just about Metro, it's about the region. Our recovery as a region, our housing crisis as a region, our different economic activity center nodes as a region. We understand that. So, you know, I think one of the things that, you know, quite frankly, I was hoping I'd have more time in the first 6 months, but one of the things I want to do in 2023, working with the board and local officials, you know, I give County Executive Alsobrook a lot of credit, her leadership. She's out there really pushing the Blue Line program. And the state of Maryland, the Public Works Board, I think it's called the Public Works Board, if I recall, is investing in the Blue Line. I think those same types of tours with, you know, whether it's Chair McKay and some members of Fairfax Supervisors or in Arlington or Alexandria, thinking through those types of strategies as well. Montgomery County has had a lot of interaction. I've had some good conversations with people up there. The team, and if we need to resource that differently, we're happy to do that. I think, you know, Board Member Golan, I really appreciate your point there. One of the things that we have to do is we have to make our sites pencil out. And if we're going to tell people they have to do a 1-to-1 parking ratio change, these deals will never pencil out. The public at large doesn't necessarily fully understand the economics of development sometimes. We want people to be as close as possible to our stations and build as many town centers, village centers. So if you took a place like Morgan Boulevard, which I was out at, it's a surface parking lot where it might take 8 minutes to walk from one end of the parking lot to the other. And the reality is we need to have probably less parking there and more housing and mixed development. And that's what the state wants. That's what we want. So I really like your point. And one of the things Ginny and Liz and I talked about was having a day for all of the developers to come in and just have a big work session day of ideas and then bring our consultants in to think through that too. So we do want to move this more in 2023. So I'll take that as an action for us to figure out how we can accelerate that.
Yeah, because they're not just plots of land. They
That's right.
are assets that we own. And there's always been talk about, Michael knows this, having been on the board for a while, how do we best utilize those assets, whether it be parking lots or the plots of working with the jurisdictions. So yeah, because every time I hear a presentation like this, I immediately think of asset allocation, asset optimization.
Part of that's the analysis too, right? Comprehensive analysis of what is the tax base, even if it doesn't financially impact us, it's good for the region. And that's, I think, one of the things Metro has the unique perspective on. We are the only thing that is multi-jurisdictional. So sometimes we get to rise above what our specific balance sheet is And if the tax base grows and more people live and work around a station, that will eventually lead to better ridership and better economics for the whole region, which feeds back into Metro long-term anyway. So I really appreciate your sentiment. I know Stephen and Liz are excited to figure out how to do more.
I mean, just keep in mind that we're not just talking about sites that are surface parking lots now. We have massive sites like North Bethesda, which have laid fallow for 40 years, and nothing's been done with them. We've selected developers who've done maybe 5% of the site and left the rest of it fallow. So we have a lot of assets out there that just aren't producing anything right now.
All right, I'm going to step in since we're on a tight timeline today. But I do want to just say thank you very much. These are exciting. The West Falls Church project is a great way to utilize that station and breathe some life into it with all the changes that happen. So thank you for all that work. And with that, I will move approval of this item to move to the full board on the 23rd. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Goldman. Any further discussion on the item? I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Chair Letourneau?
Aye.
Vice Chair Babers?
Aye.
Mr. Goldman?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. With no further business to come before the committee, we stand adjourned. I'll turn the floor over to Chair Smedberg, who has a request for the board to convene an executive session. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau. In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect